I'm Rob.
And I'm Rob.
And this is Ask Rob and Rob.
Hey everyone, welcome to Ask Rob and Rob, the show where you give us your questions and we give you our answers. This week, we're going to break from tradition and only answer one question. But because this question is so valuable, we wanted to give it our entire focus. Now you may be thinking, one question a week, how am I ever going to get my questions answered? Well, don't worry, we often do more than one, and we make it very easy for you to get your questions in. How do you do it, Rob?
Well, all you do is call 013 808 0035. That's 013 808 0035. Or if you don't fancy reaching all the way for the phone, but you're sitting in front of your laptop, then you can go to thepropertyhub.net/ask and leave us a voicemail there instead. So with pleasantries out of the way, we can get on to a true story of woe from Trevor in Broxbourne.
Hello, Rob and Rob. This is Trevor calling from Broxbourne in Hertfordshire. We're really loving the stuff that you guys are doing. Just recently signed up for the magazine, met with someone from our MP, read Rob Dix's book, the whole lot, so really great stuff. The reason I'm calling is I've recently had a terrible experience with an off-plan investment in Liverpool in L3. I exchanged contracts in November 17 and then with an anticipated completion date of June 18 and a long stop date of August 18. In February 18, I was told by the agent that the progress was 90% complete at that point. So I was thinking, fantastic, potentially even going to finish early. I got up there in February and my flat was like an extension of the existing footprint. Now, my flat hadn't even commenced in February. So pretty livid, wasted journey, wasted time, hotel costs, so on and so on. Since then, it was so difficult to receive any sort of accurate update at all on construction. Now, living 4 or 5 hours away, the one thing that you rely on is communication, and it was shocking. I went up there at end of June, the anticipated completion date, and the flat still hadn't commenced. As far as I could see, in terms of my flat, the building hadn't progressed since February, if at all. So livid, absolutely fuming, flat, no idea when it's going to be complete. Definitely not complete by a long stop date, at which point I was told it would be done by Christmas, maybe November, which I thought would be a miracle to turn around. Anyway, it was one day before my long stop date. I'm then offered 3 alternative plots to change to, which are on the floors above, for no further charge. So I thought, okay, at least I'll get something out of it, albeit not the flat that I've purchased. I review the flats, one of them I actually think is better, so I go to move on with that. I'm then informed I actually do need to pay the difference, which was how they priced it, about £20,000 for the cheapest one. Now, this is not even mentioning that during my visit in February, they'd moved the gym from the roof terrace to the basement. There was a running track on the roof terrace, completely omitted. They weren't doing the top 2 floors of the building, and they changed the layout of my flat so that the bedroom didn't have a window and only had an internal window, so no natural ventilation. At this point, I obviously decide to rescind my contract, which I've done recently, and they have 28 working days to return my deposit. I'm pretty sure I'm going to have some difficulties getting my deposit back. So my question to you guys is, what's your advice? What do I do here? I know I need to contact my solicitor. Any idea, would I be getting legal fees back if I go to sue them for breach of contract? Have you any experience of this in the past? Are they likely to get my money back in the 6 weeks? Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for getting in touch, Trevor. I feel compelled to answer this for several reasons. 1, you live down the road from me. I live in Hertfordshire. 2, this deal is in Liverpool, where I'm originally from. And 3, well, you've not had a great time, so let's try and make your time a little bit better. Or at the very least, let's help other people learn lessons from what's happened. So straight off the bat, I will say that I've researched in the background who this developer is, and I do know them. They have completed a few developments in the past. And through RMP Property, we've even sat down with them and had a meeting with them to see if we wanted to work with them. But we walked away. We didn't do a deal with them. And it's for a few reasons. We didn't like the way they protected their deposits, and also their track record with residential developments isn't that extensive, so we didn't gain confidence there either. And for that reason, and a few reasons I won't go into publicly, we decided not to do business with them. But that doesn't help you, so let's give you information that will help you. Then in this particular development you've invested in, well, it's not the most attractive in its current state, if we're talking about the same one, although it's in a great location. And it would take a lot of money to make this conversion look even reasonable from an aesthetics point of view. And that rooftop running track you mentioned that's been moved, I think that's actually probably a good idea, because a running track this close to the waterfront in Liverpool, it's going to be very windy. I can imagine a lot of flying athletes, which is not a good look and wouldn't do so well in the press. So that's probably a good idea, and I have no idea why they thought that was going to be a winner in the first place. But anyway, that's the development. Let's get into what's happened. There are a few things you want to do if you invest in off-plan. You want to make sure that the developer has a good track record, and you want to do a lot of research there. You want to make sure that your deposit is protected, and you want to make sure you've got protection to be able to pull out if things go wrong. Now, fortunately, the final point of that, the protection to pull out, you do have. But where you may fall foul is your deposit protection. Are you protected if the developer goes bust? Where this development worries me slightly is the deposit protection, and was the core reason for us not doing business. At the time of negotiating with them, and this may have changed when you've done business with them, we didn't have much confidence in the deposit protection. We also didn't have much confidence in the mortgageability of the properties because of the type of conversion it is, the fact it's so widely advertised as an investment development, that mortgageability may be a challenge as well. So they were the two core reasons. However, I do have some hope for you getting your deposit back, because this developer's not gone bust. And because they're still selling this development, as far as I'm aware, they want to go on and complete this development, and they don't want any bad press. So, if you push and start to make noise, I'm pretty confident you'll get your money returned. And if you don't, then you can publicly start to talk about how you've not had your deposit returned, because they'll still be trying to sell that development. So, while this may have been a painful lesson, you may or you may not see yourself as lucky now, but you may be lucky here and get your deposit back. You might take a little bit longer than the 6 weeks, but you can just put it down to a valuable lesson that's cost you time, a little bit of money in hotels and so on, but in the grand scheme of things, it could have been worse.
So, Trevor, the good news is that long stop date has passed, therefore you are entitled to get your deposit back. And you might have to write a few letters and fight a little bit, but given that the developer is still trying to sell and they're not going to want any bad PR, you should get there in the end. As long as the developer doesn't go bust, you'll be okay. And in this case, it seems like they're unlikely to do so. It seems like things have gone a little bit wrong with this particular development, but the company is still going to stick around. So not a happy story, but not as catastrophic as it looked at the start. The big question, Rob, is what Trevor and other listeners can do in future to avoid this kind of thing, because it's the kind of story that puts people off buying off plan completely. And I think there's a perception that it's a bit of a lottery about whether you have a good experience or a bad one. So what can you do to maximise the chances of reaping the rewards of off plan without having an experience like Trevor has here?
Okay, so let's give you a checklist. So first of all, you want to do research. What has this developer done before? So this particular developer had been involved in construction and has built out other types of projects, mainly commercial, but not so much on the residential. So they didn't have much of a track record. Now, you could be forgiven, Trevor, for going ahead because they have done other things. So what else could you have looked for? The next thing I would look for is a low deposit amount. The best developers out there don't want much in the way of deposit. They may want 10 or 15% deposit. There are many, many other developers out there, though, that want 25, 35, even 50% in the way of deposits. Maybe 25% up front and then another 25% during the build 12 months later. We don't even touch investments like this at RMP Property because you're effectively funding their build. So the high deposit amounts in this development may have been another reason why you've walked away from this one. Another thing you want to check out when you go for off-plan is the likelihood of mortgageability. Now, as this building is a conversion, and let's be honest, it's a pretty ugly conversion as well, and it's advertised all over the internet as an investment type property. If you spoke to a broker, mortgage broker, they would tell you that you would struggle to get a mortgage on this particular type of property. So again, if you were told that information by asking a few questions early on, combined with the lack of track record, combined with the deposit amounts that they're requiring you to put in, you probably would have walked away from this deal and not gone ahead in the first place. Now, they're the real high level details, Trevor, but if you go back to episode 243 on how we do our due diligence on every single investment, you're going to get a big list that you can go through, which will give you more confidence, whether you're buying off plan or just something that's already built. By going through that process, you'll have a lot more confidence and have, hopefully, a lot better experience moving forward. But don't let this put you off. Things go wrong in property. That's to be expected. And hopefully, while it may have cost you a little bit of money, the lessons that you've taken away from this are going to be priceless.
That's the attitude, because as long as you've learnt something, it's never a completely wasted experience. And an important lesson that Rob's already mentioned, but I want to emphasise, is that you shouldn't let stories like this put you off buying off plan completely. It's one of those things in property that people have irrationally strong opinions about, much like houses versus flats. You get a lot of people who've heard a second or third hand story about something that went wrong with some off plan development, and that turns into a blanket, never buy off plan. But the truth is, there's good off-plan deals and there's bad ones, and there's lots in between, just like anything in property. And yes, there are a few more things to check, because there could be risks in there, and you need to check that you're covered against those risks. But for those reasons, there are often really good deals to be done, and it would be a real shame to close your eyes to that entire type of investment, just in case there's a possibility of something going wrong. Because if you took that to its logical conclusion, you'd never buy anything ever at all, because there's always a possibility that something will go wrong. But in reality, as long as you're careful, you don't get greedy, and you go back and listen to episode 243 where we take you through everything you need to do in detail, you can make sure that you take advantage of the best opportunities and never completely eliminate the chances of something going wrong, because that's impossible, but reduce it down as much as you possibly can. And as if we haven't given you enough advice on this topic, keep your eye out very soon for a whole course that we're putting together on off-plan property, which is coming out very soon. And that's just one part of something very, very special that we are busy working on at the moment. So I'm sure you already do, but keep listening to the podcast every week and we'll let you know as soon as that's ready for you. But I think you'll find it a bit of a property game changer. So Trevor and everyone else, I hope you found this episode useful and reassuring. We are, of course, going to be back on Thursday with the Property Podcast, so we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.